Hi, this is Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom, and thank you so much for joining me for my beginner guitar course video lesson series here on YouTube. Now, in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at 2 tips for cleaner and faster chord changes. Now, if you're just joining us, if you've fallen onto this video, please understand there's an entire series on how to play guitar, and the link is listed below for the playlist, so please check that out. And if this helps you, please do me a favor and like it, share it, subscribe to my channel. It would be greatly appreciated. So let's take a look at a couple of ideas that can make our chord changes faster. Now, if you've been watching my videos prior, you know we talked about bouncing and how important it is to visualize, memorize our chords, and then practice the technique of bouncing. The tips I'm going to give you today, one of them is very similar. It's what I refer to as lift and shift. And if you think about it, if you were going to make, let's just take 2 chords that we've kind of been talking about. Let's take the E minor chord that we were introduced to, and let's take the G chord. And right now what I'm doing is I'm playing the G chord with 3 fingers. You might play, with 4 fingers or something, and you might play your chords differently than me, and don't worry about that. Okay, if you play with, different fingers or something, it's perfectly fine. But, the most important thing is I spend quality time memorizing and bouncing my fingers to make the chord changes or chord shapes that I want, right? So I've been practicing G, and I've been practicing E minor and that sort of thing. What lift and shift really is bouncing between chords. So if you think about it, again, in one of my earlier videos, I was telling you how you could set your hand on your lap, and if you wanted to make a D chord, as soon as your hand comes up, you make the D chord, or whichever chord you're going to make, so you can set it down as one uniform movement. It isn't 1, 2, 3, because that takes too long. So if you think about it, if I was making G and I wanted to go to E minor, the trick is to lift my fingers up off the guitar and then shift to the shape that I want, which is the E minor, and then set it down. That's going to be the most efficient way for me to move between, in this example, these 2 chords, right? Now, you might be doing 2 different chords or whatever it might be, but that's what you want to practice. So you practice each chord independently. But as we're going to keep learning here, there are certain chords that go together all the time. G and E minor are very common chords that you will see together in many, many, many different songs. So it's worth getting comfortable with moving between G and E minor because it's going to happen all the time. Or let's say you're working on a particular song, which I have some songs coming for you very soon, and you're having a problem moving from G to C or C to D or something like that. The first thing I would tell you is stop everything, go back and just practice that one chord, right? Bounce it, do whatever you need to do with it to get that chord developed, and then insert it into the progression that you're trying to work on and practice lifting and shifting between those. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Now, the second thing is a little bit different, but very, very important, because if you're new to this whole guitar thing, there are so many different ways that you can play chords and scales and all these different things that we do. There's no exact right or wrong way to do things. You just have to explore, and you do that through learning, through watching videos, asking friends or relatives, whatever it might be. So let's take a look at this one. So here's another one that I really like to teach people, and we can call it, it's pivoting is what it is. That's what I refer to it as. But in order to do this, we need to revamp the way we're looking at some of these chords. So let's say I wanted to play G, C, and D, and I was going to play these in the traditional sense. I would play G with either 3 fingers or 4 fingers, whatever. And then I've got a C chord. And then I've got a D chord. And then back to my G. Well, one thing that we can learn to do is change the way that we're playing these chords, change the shapes of some of these chords, again, into something that's very, very common. So I don't mean to be throwing so many chords at you so early, but I want you to understand this. Now, if you ask a lot of other people, the way that they play G oftentimes is not with the 3 fingers, but with the 4 fingers, which I explained to you earlier. Okay, so I have pinky, 3rd, middle up here, and 1st right here on the 5th string. And the reason why we play this way is oftentimes we want to go to C like this. Now you'll notice that's vastly different from this, right? even though it is a C chord. Now, we technically call this C chord that I'm moving down, it's a G chord, this 4-finger G. I'm just moving these 2 fingers down. This technically would be called a C add 9. But again, in the real world of playing songs, if you're playing something by Bob Dylan or Neil Young or, you know, who, it doesn't matter who it is, whatever it is you like, Ed Sheeran for that matter, you'll see these chords oftentimes, and even if you don't see it, it's an easy way of substituting a standard C chord. For many of us, we like the sound of that C because it's very congruent to the G chord that we just heard, because there's a lot of similar notes. There's a lot of overlapping sounds. And the last thing that makes this nice is you can see that when I pivot, I don't have to lift and shift the entire chord. I can actually leave some of that chord down and just pick up part of it and move it. So there's my G chord. And then moving to my C, I'm just dropping these 2 fingers down 1 string. And again, technically this would be called C add 9, but you can play it anywhere a C chord would be written. So if your song is asking for C, you could play this just fine. Okay, and then we have a D chord. Now, if I think about where my 3rd finger is right now, okay, my 3rd finger could stay there and I could pivot to the D chord on that finger. So if you think of like, I'm just going to go back to my my early days. If I was playing Skid Row, for instance, if I played this. You can see I'm using those chord shapes, right? If I played Pink Houses by John Cougar Mellencamp. You see, there's lots of songs that we can play that use those kind of changes. So that is another way for cleaner and faster chord changes, is instead of having to lift and shift all your chords, sometimes you don't have a choice. But oftentimes you can leave fingers down. Watch this. If I made E minor, again, I don't want you to worry about all these new shapes, but I just want you to see what I'm doing and how it creates songs that you may have heard before. So like if I took these 2 fingers right here, which is an E minor, but I'm going to play it with these 2 fingers instead, and put those 2 back on the bottom like I did for this G, now watch this. I'm going to put those over on E minor like this. So I'm just keeping this here the whole time, G, C, that sort of thing. But I'm going to do it as well over the E minor, so I get this. So again, you get these really nice sounds by leaving those fingers there. So you're pivoting on those fingers. I just want to introduce you to these things, so as you keep playing, you're gonna see these and go, well, I thought C was played this way. Well, there's lots of different ways we can approach chords. The goal is trying to figure out what works best for you, what fingers to use, what shape to play, that sort of thing. And then as you keep practicing, you kind of ease into that, and that's what you'll be using for, you know, until you learn something new that works better. Or you just like the sound of it or whatever it might be. So please make sure that you subscribe to my channel and share the videos. Do me a favor, share the videos with somebody out there. Share the playlist. The link is below in the description. That way you can follow along. I'll keep doing new videos as well to add to this playlist in the future. And that way you'll always be notified when I do. And the last thing is there's a link in the description as well for some free training from me, a free guitar course. And I want to give that to you. So if you're interested, go ahead and click on that as well. And thank you so much for taking your time out to watch this with me. And stay positive, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?